When you look at the Louis Vuitton monogram, that famous interlocking L and V, what do you see? To the average consumer, it represents 170 years of Parisian craftsmanship. It represents heritage, royalty, and the timeless art of travel. It is the ultimate status symbol, worn by everyone from Victorian aristocrats to modern-day rap icons. We are sold a fantasy that this brand is built on the legacy of a humble trunk maker who walked to Paris to serve the Empress of France. But that is just the marketing. The reality is much colder. The Louis Vuitton you know today was not built by a designer. It was not built by an artist. It was built by a construction engineer who never stitched a single handbag in his life. His name is Bernard Arnault. In the polite salons of Paris, he is feared. In the cutthroat boardrooms of New York, he is respected. But in the history books of business, he is known by a far more terrifying name: the Wolf in Cashmere. While Elon Musk built rockets and Jeff Bezos built the internet's general store, Bernard Arnault did something far more subtle and sinister. He realized that luxury wasn't just about selling expensive products, it was about monopolizing desire. Through a series of the most brutal corporate takeovers in European history, he didn't just buy brands, he conquered them. He took a struggling textile company and transformed it into LVMH, a $400 billion war machine that controls over 75 of the most prestigious names on earth: Dior, Fendi, Givenchy, Tiffany, Bulgari, Dom Perignon. If you buy luxury, you are likely paying him. But how did he do it? How did an outsider with zero experience in fashion manage to steal the crown jewels of France right from under the noses of the families who owned them for centuries? This is not a story about fashion. This is a story about family betrayal, courtroom battles, and a corporate raid so aggressive it changed the laws of a nation. Welcome to the Wealth Memoir. This is the story of how the wolf in Cashmere ate the world of luxury. To understand the empire Bernard Arnault would one day conquer, we first have to understand the treasure he was chasing. The story doesn't begin in a boardroom in the 1980s. It begins in a dirt road in eastern France in 1835. A 13-year-old boy named Louis Vuitton ran away from home. He had no money, no connections, and no education. He was fleeing a wicked stepmother and a life of poverty in the Jura Mountains. For 2 years he walked toward Paris, a journey of nearly 300 miles, taking odd jobs along the way just to survive. When he finally arrived in the City of Light, it was undergoing an industrial revolution. Steam trains and steamships were beginning to connect the world. The rich were traveling like never before, but they had a problem. Their luggage was terrible. The trunks of that era were round-topped to let rain run off, but this made them impossible to stack. They were heavy, clumsy, and often smashed during transit. Young Louis landed an apprenticeship with a boxmaker and quickly discovered he had a gift. He wasn't just good, he was a genius with wood and canvas. He invented a flat-topped, stackable trunk that was lightweight yet virtually indestructible. It was the iPhone of the 19th century, a piece of technology that changed how people lived. His reputation grew so fast that he was hired as the personal packer for the Empress Eugenie, the wife of Napoleon III. With the royal seal of approval, he opened his own workshop in 1854. For the next 100 years, the Vuitton family protected this legacy with their lives. They survived the Franco-Prussian War, where their factory was destroyed. They survived 2 world wars. Louis's son, Georges, invented the famous unpickable lock, a lock so secure he publicly challenged Harry Houdini to escape from a Vuitton box. Houdini declined. By the mid-20th century, Louis Vuitton wasn't just a brand, it was a symbol of old money. It was the brand of Audrey Hepburn, Cary Grant, and the Duke of Windsor. It was exclusive, family-run, and obsessed with quality. But as the decades passed, that obsession with tradition became a weakness. By the 1980s, the world had changed. Fashion was becoming fast, flashy, and global. The Vuitton family, now in its 4th generation, was still operating like a 19th century artisan shop. They were profitable, yes, but they were small. They had only 2 stores in the entire world, one in Paris and one in Nice. The company was essentially a sleeping giant. It had the most valuable name in the world, yet it was being run like a local bakery. The family was content with their quiet wealth. They had no idea that across the Atlantic, a young French real estate developer was watching them. He saw something they didn't. He didn't see a trunk maker. He saw a global superpower waiting to be unleashed. And unlike the Vuitton family, who cared about art and heritage, this man cared about only one thing: scale. The sleeping giant was about to be woken up, but not by a prince. It was about to be woken up by a predator. While the Vuitton family was quietly tending to their legacy in Paris, Bernard Arnault was in exile. It was 1981, and France had just elected a socialist president, François Mitterrand. Fearing that the new government would tax the wealthy into oblivion, Arnault moved to the United States. He wasn't looking for fashion. He was a construction engineer trying to build vacation condos in Florida. But one ordinary taxi ride in New York City changed the course of history. Arnault struck up a conversation with his cab driver. He asked the man, "Do you know who the president of France is?" The driver shook his head and said, "No, but I know Christian Dior." That sentence hit Arnault like a lightning bolt. Here was an American cab driver who couldn't name the leader of a G7 nation, but he knew the name of a French fashion house. Arnault realized instantly that a luxury brand wasn't just a business, it was a global language. It had power that transcended politics and borders. He returned to France in 1984 with a singular obsession. He wanted to buy Christian Dior. But there was a catch. Dior wasn't for sale. It was trapped inside a massive, bankrupt textile conglomerate called Boussac Sans Frères. Boussac was a disaster. It was losing money every day. It owned diaper factories, textile mills, and department stores that were crumbling. The French government was desperate to find a buyer who would save the company, and more importantly, save the 30,000 jobs attached to it. Arnault saw his opening. He didn't want the diaper factories. He didn't want the textile mills. He only wanted the jewel hidden inside the trash, Christian Dior. But to get the jewel, he had to buy the whole pile of trash. He made a deal with the French government. He put up $15 million of his family's money and convinced the investment bank Lazard to back the rest. He promised the government that if they let him buy Boussac, he would maintain operations and preserve jobs. The desperate government agreed. They thought they had found a savior. They had actually let in a shark. The moment the ink was dry on the contract, Arnault revealed his true nature. He didn't save the company, he stripped it. In a move that shocked the polite French business world, Arnault laid off 9,000 workers. He sold off the diaper division, He sold off the textile mills. He sold almost every asset Boussac had. He had promised to be a builder, but he acted like a liquidator. The French press turned on him. They called him the Terminator. They called him a wolf. But Arnault didn't care about bad press. He cared about the balance sheet. By the time the dust settled, he had generated $500 million in cash from selling the scraps of Boussac. And standing tall in the wreckage was the only thing he had kept: Christian Dior. He had bought a billion-dollar brand for pennies on the dollar. He had proven that he had no sentimental attachment to tradition or jobs. He was cold, calculating, and now incredibly cash-rich. With the Dior brand in one hand and a $500 million war chest in the other, Bernard Arnault looked around for his next target. He saw a merged company that was fighting itself, a company called LVMH. The wolf had tasted blood, and he was ready for the main course. By 1987, the luxury world had created a monster. Two of France's most legendary companies had decided to merge. On one side was Louis Vuitton, run by the 75-year-old patriarch of the Vuitton family, Henri Racamier. He was a man of the old world, a former steel executive who had married into the family and turned the sleepy trunk maker into a global retail phenomenon. He represented heritage, style, and the soul of the brand. On the other side was Moet Hennessy, the alcohol giant that owned Moet Chandon champagne and Hennessy cognac. It was run by Alain Chevalier, a cold, efficient corporate manager who cared only about distribution and margins. They merged to form LVMH, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, theoretically to protect themselves from hostile takeovers. But in reality, they had created a battlefield. From day one, the two men hated each other. Racamier looked down on Chevalier as a mere manager, a bean counter with no taste. Chevalier looked at Racamier as a stubborn old man who refused to modernize. The board meetings were toxic. They argued over everything, from strategy to whose office was bigger. The company was paralyzed by their egos. Racamier, fearing that Chevalier was trying to push him out, decided he needed an ally. He needed a white knight, someone young, aggressive, and wealthy who could buy some shares and support him in the boardroom. He looked around Paris and saw the young man who had just saved Christian Dior. He saw Bernard Arnault. It was the single greatest miscalculation in the history of business. Racamier invited Arnault to lunch. He asked him to invest in LVMH and side with the Vuitton faction against the Moet faction. Arnault agreed. He played the role of the respectful junior partner perfectly. He smiled, he nodded, and he bought shares. But Arnault wasn't a white knight. He was a Trojan horse. While Racamier and Chevalier were busy fighting each other, Arnault was quietly making his own moves. He looked at the chaos and realized that neither of these men deserved to rule. The company was undervalued because of their infighting. Arnault secretly flew to London and met with Guinness, the British beer giant. He proposed a daring alliance. If Guinness helped him finance a massive raid, they could take over the whole thing. In the summer of 1988, while the rest of France was on vacation, Arnault struck. He didn't just buy a few shares, he launched a full-scale invasion. Using the cash from the Boussac deal and the backing from Guinness, Arnault aggressively bought up 43% of LVMH's stock. When Racamier realized what was happening, it was too late. The young man he had invited in for tea was now owning nearly half his house. The White Knight took off his mask. Arnault abruptly switched sides. He went to Chevalier, the Moet boss, and forced him out. Then he turned his guns on Racamier. What followed was one of the most vicious legal battles France had ever seen. Racamier fought like a wounded lion. He sued Arnault. He went on television and called him a raider and a pirate. He tried to change the voting rights of the shares to block Arnault. He appealed to the patriotism of the French people, claiming that Arnault was stealing a national treasure with foreign British money. The courts were jammed with lawsuits for months. The French public was captivated. It was a soap opera of billions. But Arnault was colder, faster, and younger. He exploited every loophole in the French stock market regulations. He used his 43% stake to create a blocking minority, making it impossible for Racamier to pass any decisions. He paralyzed the company until Racamier had no choice but to surrender. In 1990, the court delivered the final verdict. Arnault was declared the rightful chairman of LVMH. Henri Racamier, the man who had built modern Louis Vuitton, was thrown out of his own company. He died a few years later, reportedly of a broken heart, still cursing Arnault's name. The war was over. The families were gone. The managers were fired. Bernard Arnault, the engineer from the north, now sat on the iron throne of luxury. He controlled Louis Vuitton, Moet, Hennessy, and Dior. But he didn't stop to celebrate. He looked at his new empire and realized that these brands were dusty. They were prestigious, yes, but they were boring. To make them worth the billions he had just spent, he needed to do something radical. He needed to shock the world. He was about to turn the holy temple of Louis Vuitton into a rock concert. Bernard Arnault had the crown, but he had a problem. In the early 1990s, Louis Vuitton was still seen as your grandmother's brand. It was sturdy, reliable, and frankly boring. Arnault, the engineer with the cold stare, understood something about human psychology that the artisans didn't. He realized that in the modern world, luxury isn't about quality, it's about hype. To create hype, he didn't need better leather, he needed chaos. He implemented what he called the star strategy. The formula was simple but radical. Take a historic, dusty brand and smash it together with a young, rebellious, and controversial designer. The resulting explosion would generate free press worth billions. His first target was the Holy Grail itself, Louis Vuitton. In 1997, Arnault did the unthinkable. He hired Marc Jacobs, a young American designer known for grunge fashion, flannel shirts, and combat boots, to become the creative director of Louis Vuitton. The French establishment was horrified. They thought Arnault was destroying the heritage. But Arnault gave Jacobs a single instruction: shake it up. And shake it up he did. Jacobs didn't just design clothes, he committed sacrilege. He took the sacred LV monogram canvas, which hadn't been changed in 100 years, and invited artists to deface it. He released bags covered in neon graffiti. He put cherries on them. They made them glow in the dark. The purists screamed, but the customers, they went insane. The graffiti bags sold out instantly. Suddenly, Louis Vuitton wasn't for old ladies on steamships. It was for Paris Hilton, Jennifer Lopez, and the new pop culture elite. Arnault had turned a luggage company into a pop culture icon. He repeated this formula everywhere.
For Christian Dior, he hired John Galliano, a wild British genius who treated fashion shows like theater. Galliano sent models down the runway dressed as homeless people or covered in newspaper. These shows cost millions and often didn't sell a single dress, but Arnault didn't care. He knew the secret. The fashion show is the commercial. The wild dresses on the runway created the dream, and that dream is what sold the lipstick, the perfume, and the entry-level handbags to the middle class. Arnault realized that the high-end couture was a loss leader. It was just marketing to sell the high-margin accessories. Under this new strategy, LVMH exploded. Arnault became the master puppeteer of the fashion world. He proved that you don't need to be an artist to run a fashion house. You just need to know which artist to hire and exactly how much freedom to give them before they burn the house down. He had conquered France. He had conquered the youth, but Arnault's hunger was bottomless. He looked at the map and saw that there were still rival tribes, Italian families who refused to bow to him. He set his sights on the two biggest prizes left in the wild, Gucci and Hermès. But this time, the wolf would find himself walking into a trap.
By the late 90s, Bernard Arnault was undefeated. He was the apex predator of the business world. But even predators bleed, and in the history of his conquests, there are two scars that still ache. Two families that looked the wolf in the eye and didn't blink. The first was Gucci. In 1999, Gucci was the hottest brand on the planet, led by the legendary designer Tom Ford. Arnault wanted it. He started his usual playbook, quietly buying shares in secret, creeping up like a shadow until he owned 34% of the company. The Gucci executives panicked. They knew that once Arnault took control, their freedom would be gone. So they did something unprecedented. They found a white knight of their own. They called Arnault's biggest rival, another French billionaire named François Pinault, the owner of what is now Kering. What followed was the War of Handbags. It was the nastiest corporate battle in history. Arnault sued. Pinault countersued. They fought in courts in Amsterdam and Paris. They insulted each other in the press. For the first time, Arnault was outmaneuvered. Pinault offered a deal that gave Gucci's management independence, something Arnault refused to give. The court ruled against Arnault. He was forced to sell his shares. He walked away with a $700 million profit, but for a man like Arnault, money is cheap. He didn't want the money, he wanted the crown. Losing Gucci to his arch-rival was a public humiliation. But if Gucci was a brawl, the war for Hermès was a spy thriller. Hermès is the crown jewel of luxury. It is the only brand more exclusive than Louis Vuitton, and for Arnault, it was the ultimate prize. But the Hermès family knew he was coming. They had watched him destroy the Vuitton family. They swore he would never touch their company. So, Arnault decided to be invisible. Starting in 2001, he began buying Hermès stock using complex financial instruments called equity swaps. These derivatives allowed him to own the company without actually holding the shares in his name, meaning he didn't have to disclose his position to the regulators. He did this for 10 years. Then, on a Saturday morning in October 2010, Arnault made a phone call to the Hermès family. He calmly informed them that he, surprise, now owned 17% of their company. The Hermès family was in shock. They called it an attack. The CEO of Hermès famously told the press, "If you want to seduce a beautiful woman, you don't start by raping her behind."
Arnault claimed he came in peace. The family didn't believe a word of it. In a historic move, 50 members of the Hermès family, who usually argued over money, united against the common enemy. They locked their shares into a fortress holding company that made it impossible for Arnault to buy them out. They sued him for insider trading. The French government got involved. The regulator fined LVMH. The public turned against him. Arnault realized he had finally hit a wall he couldn't break. In 2014, he signed a truce and distributed his Hermès shares. He had lost the battle, but as always, the wolf didn't stay hungry for long. If he couldn't have the Italian leather of Gucci or the French silk of Hermès, he would go across the ocean. He would go to America. He was about to make the biggest bet of his life.
After the bruises of the Hermès War, critics whispered that Bernard Arnault was getting old. They said the wolf had lost his teeth. They were wrong. He was just waiting for a bigger meal. In 2019, Arnault set his sights on the most iconic American brand in existence, Tiffany & Co. It was the brand of Audrey Hepburn, of presidents, of American royalty. And unlike the family-owned European houses, Tiffany was a public company. It had no family fortress to protect it. Arnault made an offer that shook the financial world, $16.2 billion. It was the largest luxury deal in human history. Tiffany said yes. Champagne was popped. The deal was done. But then, the world stopped. In 2020, the pandemic hit. The luxury market collapsed overnight. Tourism vanished. Tiffany's sales plummeted. Most billionaires would have panicked. Arnault, he saw an opportunity to get a discount. In a move that stunned Wall Street, Arnault tried to back out of the deal. He claimed Tiffany was being mismanaged during the crisis. He even used a letter from the French government as an excuse to delay the purchase. It was a classic wolf tactic. Create chaos, drive the price down, and force the other side to beg. Tiffany sued him. Arnault countersued. For months, it looked like the deal was dead. But it was all a game of poker. Arnault didn't want to walk away. He just didn't want to pay full price. In the end, Tiffany's board blinked. They agreed to lower the price by $425 million just to close the deal. To Arnault, $400 million is pocket change. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. The wolf never pays retail. In January 2021, the deal closed. Arnault instantly fired the leadership team, installed his son Alexander to run the company, and launched a massive rebranding campaign featuring Jay-Z and Beyoncé. Overnight, Tiffany wasn't just a jewelry store anymore. It was cool again. With Tiffany in his pocket, Arnault's collection was complete. He had conquered fashion, Dior, Vuitton, alcohol, Moet, Hennessy, and now jewelry. He had built a fortress so big, so diverse, and so powerful that no economic crash could destroy it. He had won. So, how will history remember Bernard Arnault? To his investors, he is a god. He took a fragmented, dying industry of family workshops and turned it into the most profitable business model on earth. He made French craftsmanship the envy of the world. He is the reason Paris is still the capital of fashion.
At various points, this engineer has been the richest man on the planet, wealthier than Musk, Bezos, or Gates. But, to the purists, he is the man who killed the soul of luxury. Before Arnault, luxury was about the maker, the trunk maker, the dressmaker, the jeweler. It was personal, it was slow. After Arnault, luxury became about the marketer. He proved that you don't need to sell a product, you just need to sell a dream. He industrialized the illusion of exclusivity. When you walk into a Louis Vuitton store today, you aren't just buying a bag, you are buying a ticket to the world he built. A world where heritage is an asset class, where art is a strategy, and where history is just another line item on a balance sheet. The wolf in Cashmere didn't just conquer the luxury world, he redefined it in his own image. He taught us the most expensive lesson of all. True power isn't about making the best product, it's about owning the only thing money can't buy: time. And Bernard Arnault now owns 170 years of it.